We just realised we haven't pressed the record button. Thank you, Tom. So we're looking at making sure that DFID retains its status as an independent department which looks after making sure that UK aid is focused firmly on poverty reduction. That's what it's all about. It's become a world leader and a well-respected global influencer in the aid and development arena. And so since its creation in 1997, successive secretaries of state of both main political parties have built up this department, which is highly respected internationally and regularly rated by independent auditors as very effective and transparent. And very few other government departments can make that kind of claim. So we don't think that would automatically translate into a new or merged department. And so we could really see progress the UK has made in terms of poverty reduction being set back, but also that soft influence that the department has around the world. We think DFID also has a role in making sure that other government departments which spend aid money do that well, and that's something that we could improve on in our UK aid policy. In fact, one of the concerns is we have increasingly other government departments are spending UK aid money. So just to give you a very few facts and figures, in 2015, DFID spent 80% of UK's overseas development assistance, or ODA. By 2020, it'll be down to 70%, and the rest being spent by a total of 14 other departments, believe it or not. And don't ask me who all of those are, but it's obviously quite a few. At the moment, we can see in the news, aid is being used as a political football. And so Results and other NGOs that we're working with closely haven't publicly commented on Boris Johnson's statement, not least because it's the Conservative Party conference at the moment. And right now, we just don't know what the political climate will be, even by the end of the week. And we don't know what the Prime Minister's views are on this. So, of course, we're watching out for any information we can get right now. It will, if things change, it will be directly relevant to our work at Results. But now's not the time to be publicly commenting on this very political intervention by the Foreign Secretary. But I did want to mention it because some of you will have seen that in the news. However, we do firmly believe that it's our role to make politicians aware of the good work that aid is doing. And that's on all of the issues that many of you have been campaigning on. So we're talking about the UK's support for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB and Malaria, the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, the Global Partnership for Education, the UK's support for climate risk insurance, for malnutrition, and many other examples. All those things that we know have real impact. So we need to be speaking out about that. You might find, you may not all have found this, but there's a tool on the UK government website called Development Tracker. So it's devtracker, all one word, .dfid.gov.uk. But you can actually just search for Development Tracker. And it shows all the current programmes that the UK government is funding and their impact and their reach. And it's really well worth going to look at that. It's certainly a good source of facts and figures for any letter writing that you do. So just it shows on the front page that thanks to UK aid, 67 million children get immunised against preventable diseases, 64 million people are reached with water sanitation and hygiene promotion, 11 million children supported in primary and lower secondary education. So there's some top line figures like that there, but if you really want to see it, you can actually go down into spreadsheets and see the raw programme data from which those figures are drawn. So just demonstrating that we are very transparent in the UK on how aid money is spent. So as I say, just to sort of close my remarks, Results, we're very clear that UK aid not only saves and improves millions of lives every year, but also that it contributes to a healthier, safer and more prosperous world. And there's clear evidence of the link between aid spending, reducing poverty and encouraging a country's independence and its ability to stand on its own 2 feet in the long term. And this is the message we think that the public and politicians need to hear loud and clear. And thanks to your position as campaigners, you are the experts on this, and you really do have the answers that people need to hear. As you probably know, or those of you who've been around longer know, Results staff here in the office also work directly with parliamentarians. And just to pick up on one piece of work recently, this month we've taken another 3 MPs from across parties to visit education and nutrition programmes in Tanzania. and they now feel much more knowledgeable on these issues, more aware of what's achieved with UK aid money, and hopefully they'll now feel able to be stronger champions on these issues alongside the MPs that you're reaching. I'm not sure. I think our guest speaker's on the line. But before we join him, can I just ask for Tom if he can do a quick roundup of some of the campaigning actions that have been happening around the country that you've been doing?
Great, thanks, David. Hi everyone, it's great to be on the call with you all tonight. So just a couple of updates from me this evening. So following the summer postcard action to MPs, which many of you told us about and which we reported on last month, we went back to very specific action on gaining a pledge from the UK government to support the Nutrition for Growth agenda at the next meeting in Milan this November. So far, we know about contacts made with MPs in Birmingham and in Lithgow. Thank you very much for letting us know about those. Does either of you want to say anything about them? Do we have Carrie or William on the call? Hi, Carrie.
Well, hi. I can't remember who we contacted in Birmingham now.
Not to worry.
Sorry about this. I'm planning on meeting my MP this Friday, so it wasn't my MP. Do you know who's anybody? No, it's not us three. So it's somebody else in the group's contacted.
Okay.
I apologise.
We'll get an update from you next month then.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. William?
Yes, well, we received a reply from our MP that he had forwarded my letter to Priti Patel, and then he sort of finishes off, if there's anything more that I can do, just let him know. So we're really still awaiting some response. But we did get a response from an earlier email, and so we'll live in hope.
That's great, William. Thanks for that. Are there any more meetings or letters from around the country that people want to share?
Yeah, I think in Macclesfield we've had a couple of correspondence.
Hi, Ricky. We can't quite hear you. Are you speaking into a mic?
Yeah, I'll speak more boldly and closely to the mic. So in Macclesfield, we've written several letters, and Jay and I went to see David a little while ago. We have got a letter that's arrived quite recently, but if you want to, give me a minute or two, maybe take information from one or two others, and I'll go and find a copy of it and see what it actually says.
That'd be great. Does anybody else have anything to share? Yeah, we've got something here in the social.
All right. Tom?
Yes, William?
Yes. I was very taken with your photographs that came with the notes,
Thank you.
particularly the one showing the well-fed and the undernourished boys. And I just wonder whether you can send me something that I can pass on to the local paper and perhaps a national paper, because it really gets the message across very well indeed.
Yeah, of course. I can send you that photo, William. It has already been published in a few national media, including an article by Will, who's our guest speaker on the call tonight. But by all means, feel free to share it with local media as well.
Sorry.
What are you going to say?
No, go ahead.
So the London group did a really cool event this week, or a couple of weeks ago now. We went to a farmer's market in Stepney Green to do some campaigning. So we had like a little quiz, and we were basically just talking to people all about malnutrition, and everyone was there was really interested in food, so it was something that was really easy to get them to care about. And we got loads and loads of people to take pictures with like our sign and our little hashtag, which says hashtag healthy lives, I think it was. So then we used all those pictures, we posted them loads to social media, we tweeted Priti Patel and DFID. They have yet to get back to us, but hopefully this means that they're really, really aware of the campaign. So that was a really exciting event to be part of.
Amazing. Thanks for that. Ricky, do you have your letter to hand now?
Yeah, actually, the most recent one we've got is about housing benefits, which I don't think was ever on results in the agenda, so sorry about that. But we've had communication in the last few months about education and the ODA and about TB, so all the topics. I mean, the only comment I would make is that we've had these letters saying that the minister has been informed. I don't, in at least one case, that must have been Priti Patel. And I don't recall that we've at ever point had a communique from her. So that might be something for me to take away and trace up, actually.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea. Does anybody have anything else? All right, thanks. I should say that hearing about your actions is really important to us, so we know where political pressure is being applied. Even a very small number of actions can make a huge difference. See if you're not being able to take an action in any given month, and of course that's completely fine, it's still worth telling us and also feeding back on how your monthly meeting went. If you're a group leader on the call, you should now have a new format feedback form, which Maddie shared last month. I believe there are 2 versions, one which you can fill in online and one which you can print off. So I know some of you prefer to actually fill them in during your meeting. So thanks everyone. Lastly, some of you may know that our campaigns coordinator here in the office, Maddie, has left results to move on to a great job at Save the Children, campaigning on UK poverty issues. She'll be greatly missed, I know, but we wish her well. We'll let you know who the new coordinator is as soon as we can. Right, back to Naveed.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. I'm delighted to now introduce our expert caller for the evening, who's Will Worley, a freelance journalist who writes for The Independent, among others. Will, are you with us? Can you hear us?
Hi, yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello, yes, we can see you.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure. Thanks for being with us. So I'll just do a very quick introduction, if I may. Will actually came on a results delegation to Madagascar last year, where he saw firsthand the problems of TB and malnutrition there, and was able to write some really powerful pieces in The Independent and Al Jazeera as a result. So we've got someone here with us tonight who's not only knows the issues we work on, and working on international development, climate change, migration and other issues that are really important in shaping our world. So he is a real expert on how to get this kind of material in the news. And he's written for things like The Independent, the iNewspaper, CNN, Vice, Al Jazeera, and many more. So, we're really grateful to you, Will, for being here and to agree to share your experience tonight. You're on our regular monthly grassroots conference call, and the people you can see or hear are our grassroots campaigners from around the UK, from Edinburgh and Linlithgow in the north to Poole and Brighton in the south. Never quite sure which are exactly the most far north and south. And our groups take regular action on international development issues, such as visiting MPs, doing local media work, and running events, such as the things you've just heard about just now. So thanks again for joining us. The format that we're going to use is the usual one. So we have 3 pre-prepared questions for you, Will, and then after that we'll open up the floor. For those of you who are on your computers, feel free to use the chat function at the bottom, which I'm just going to turn on now so I can see it. Those of you who would prefer to text in rather than actually ask a question in plenary, as it were, you can use the number I'm about to read you, which is 07906 662 571. That's 07906 662 571. So before we just take those questions, Will, I wonder if you could do us a favour and tell us in a couple of minutes, what is your story? What fires you up to in your role as a freelance journalist? And in particular, what is it that motivates you to cover international development issues?
So I work for a number of different news outlets, and international development is not the only thing I cover, but by a long way. But it is a particular kind of area of interest, particularly international health. But it motivates me just because it's interesting. It's stuff that's happening in our world. It's important, and I imagine I'm motivated for the same reason as you are. I should probably say that international development, I know you guys are experts in lobbying for it, but it is a hard sell for a lot of newspapers. That's probably the first thing to kind of make clear to you guys, that this isn't easy to write stories and to get media coverage of these types of issues, particularly stuff that have more of a news hook, like education, for instance, is really, really tricky. And I found that kind of from my own experience, and I know other people have as well. And you do have to be really persistent and really imaginative in kind of how you go about doing it. And that's going to be reflected in your campaigning and letter writing. I'm not a comment editor. I know you're the campaign is a lot of it about writing letters and things like that. I'm a journalist, but I have spoken with a comment editor at The Independent, who I hope will kind of bring a bit of insight to what I say this evening. Be persistent. It's not going to be an easy sell, and it's important to remember that editors have many different competing priorities, and your agenda is not always going to be something that they're just going to give over to you. You're going to have to fight for it.
Great, thanks for that starting point. I think it's really good to start with that challenge. So, as I said, we're really grateful that you're here to help us understand how we can try and overcome that challenge, and particularly around this hook that we have on the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty on the 17th of October. So let's get into these right now. And can we have the first question for Will? I think is that from Brighton? They're there. Maybe. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're here.
Hello.
Hi, Will. Hi, Naveed.
Hi,
Will. James writing. What is the value in writing to local papers? Does it have any real influence?
Okay, so I think the answer to this is kind of mixed. In terms of local papers, as I'm kind of sure you're all aware, the local media landscape has changed a heck of a lot in the last few years, and it's not especially healthy. That's kind of the first thing to take into account. And I think I spoke to a couple of friends who work for MPs, and they were kind of split as to how much attention they paid to local papers. One said they like to have things in there, so they'd like to have their own letters in there, so I'd kind of presume that they would use that to keep abreast of local news. But others said, no, most of it is about Twitter and the letters that we get to in our inboxes. In terms of MPs, in terms of the local press, you need to kind of think about the readership and who is going to be looking at it. The nationals, obviously, and kind of specialist outlets like The Economist are going to have some pretty high-profile, influential readers. The whole Daily Mail, maybe not so much, or some kind of very small local papers. And maybe think about who's going to be reading the local paper, and kind of what influence they're going to have. It's going to vary, and it kind of depends on the luck. Think honestly about what the state of that local media is. The idea is that kind of engaging dialogue about the news, and to bring something to them out of the blue is going to be quite difficult. So to local papers, variable, and national papers, that's good. I mean, also think about specialist publications. I mean, I know you wanted to pitch a story on education. Think about perhaps sending that to an education magazine publication. They're going to be much more likely to run something on that than perhaps a local paper where there's no hook for it. And again,
Will, are you still with us? Oh, hello.
Yeah, hi, sorry.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that kind of starting point. That's really useful to set out the challenges. I think we kind of all probably, many people in the network know that just as with MPs, there's going to be some that are more kind of open to taking our stuff, and more that are kind of some others that are going to be more of a challenge, or need to find that kind of local angle. So thank you for making that really clear from the start. This might kind of segue into the next question, which is from our Stort Valley group. So I think we've got Pete on the line.
Yep.
Hi, Pete.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Excellent. Yeah, my question is, how can we ensure that our letters will be seen by the right person at the newspaper and not ignored?
I think the first thing to do is send it to the right email address, find out who the letter is. That's a great start. So these people, especially in the national press, these people are getting thousands of emails a day in the letters in their inbox. You have to bear that in mind. The subject line is going to be very important. You need to make that snappy and kind of think almost as if that would work as a headline. If your subject line is boring and they kind of initially see it as irrelevant, the chances are they're not going to spend the time to go through it. The copy itself needs to be short and succinct. No one's going to read more than 250, 300 words in the letter unless you're very, very special. So keep it relevant. Keep it, just make sure you're writing something really good. Again, we kind of spoke about the hook and the angle. If you can relate something to the publication's readers, and especially the local papers readers, that's really good. I mean, they're going to be, as soon as you can relate something to someone's audience, they're going to be much more inclined to run it. And if you can think of an angle that's going to do that, that's going to be very advantageous for you. It also helps if you're someone who is an expert or an influencer in that area, so you kind of know what you're talking about. You're not just Johnny on the street who has a few things to say. And if you can kind of bring all those people together, in all those factors together into something quite short but clever, it's going to be much more be able to grab an editor's attention much more easily. Again, it's really important to remember that editors have a lot of different competing priorities. Make it relate to if it's a national, or maybe in this case a local, I'm not so sure. If you can make it relate to a story that was run in the newspaper, that's absolutely key, and that's creating a dialogue about the news, which is what the letters page in a newspaper is all about. So if you can do that, I mean, go in looking to do that and keep it relevant. They have to reflect the interests of their readership as well as kind of push what's important.
Great. I think what you may not be aware of, Will, is that we have some people around our network who have been quite good over certainly the time I've been with results at finding some of those local angles to be able to sort of link international development stories too. I'm hoping that maybe later on in the call, when we branch out into a more general discussion, those of you who do have experience of that, please do kind of share how you did that in previous actions, because for some of us, some of the other people on the call, this may be their first time taking immediate action. But yeah, just we do have some real experts, and I hope they'll be able to share a bit later on. So can we maybe move to our third question, which is from Birmingham?
Evening. Hello, everybody. Hello, Will. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Good, right. My question is, what are the best arguments to use in a letter to the editor in support of international development to make it more likely that it will be printed?
Okay. So we covered kind of the main points about, giving it a hook and making it relatable to the readers. Probably the most important things, but, spend time on these things. If it's a cut and paste job, the editor's going to see it a mile off and they're not going to touch it. You've got to think of it as a kind of a mini comment piece, a mini opinion piece. And, you've got to construct it very succinctly, and the things that you think are going to be most kind of attractive, most relevant, they've got to be at the top and put them through in a kind of in a succinct way. I mean, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Remember, in online, attention span is going to be limited. People aren't going to read through lots and lots of words, especially if it's from someone they don't know. But obviously, explain why something deserves more attention is going to be your priorities, like why they should be paying attention to what they're doing. I mean, and also maybe kind of citing some less obvious facts, perhaps, rather than poverty has decreased, but we need to keep working. We hear that quite a lot, but if you can cite specific facts maybe relevant to your angle, perhaps facts about vaccination or the polio program or things like that, that would, rather than kind of relying on a broader lines, I think that would perhaps make it more interesting and just a little bit different to what people see. Try and differentiate it from what you might see in the marketing, the official marketing from charities and NGOs. Make it more personal and give it a bit of nuance, because if they think it's just someone kind of doing, a fairly cut and paste sort of piece, or it feels like they're following a template, it's not going to give the readership, give the lettuce page the kind of nuance and the individuality that it needs. Highlighting the progress made is really important. And, the state of the UK media, particularly in certain part of the right-wing media, the aid gets a lot of bad press, and you do need to be making the case for it. I know, Naveed, you kind of touched on this at the start by saying, you need to be highlighting more of what aid spending is doing, and also the fact that it is helping a country kind of stand on its own 2 feet. I think in bearing in mind the kind of current political climate, that's a pretty important point to make. So, highlighting the kind of the slightly less kind of altruistic points and maybe more the kind of harder realpolitik points. Often the key messaging doesn't reach the public. You need to be changed. What you kind of should be aiming to do, I think, through these letters is making aid not about stories about girl bands in Ethiopia that are going to stick in the public mind. You need to be introducing other things that people will remember, and use that to kind of change the narrative. And if you can make something funny, you're onto a winner. Difficult to perhaps do with other stuff, the kind of subject matter you're working with, but letter editors love humour, and if you can make someone chuckle, then that's a really good way to get their attention.
Great, thank you. Well, I'd definitely second some of those things. Definitely the fact that, as you can all do, you've all got your kind of knowledge, the things that you've been doing locally, anything you can do to differentiate yourself from our kind of messages. You'll appreciate that at Results in the office, we've been sort of working with other NGOs to try and sort of work out what messages we want to portray and how, but that is very much crafted, and as Will says, that will be very, very obvious to editors. Use your own personal motivations and stories. I couldn't agree more. And we don't sort of probably support aid the best by just saying support aid, but actually using the examples that most of you probably have to hand or can easily get through our materials and personalise it. So yeah, we'd very much second what you just said there. So we're starting to get in some of the detail of how to get letters to the editor printed. I'm going to open it up to the floor now. I've got to see a couple of things already coming on the chat box, which I'll read out in a minute. So really just thinking about, I mean, we're very lucky to have Will here, so let's pick his brains on the best using the media to push forward with your campaigning. So it could be beyond just letters to the editor. It could be any how-tos on just working with the media more generally, maybe getting blog posts or articles published. Maybe we could tease out that discussion a bit more about some of the actual arguments and issues you could talk about. So it could be more on the content side about writing compelling copy on international development, which, as Will just said, is not necessarily the easiest thing to do with all the facts and figures we sometimes trade in. So just a reminder of the number to text questions in on. It's 07906 662 571. someone was there trying to launch in
Yep.
with the first question. Go ahead, whoever that is.
Pete.
Oh, hi, Pete. Go ahead.
Yeah, going back to an earlier question, first question. Our local newspaper, somebody's using a mic. Our local newspaper has actually become really crappy. It's consolidated several towns into one area, and it's really all about carnival fates and who got killed on the motorway. They are not really supporting community efforts, and the actual content is very dull. I think Jill might have something to say about that too. But how on earth do we get the editors interested in this, a subject like this?
I mean, I think the sad reality is I probably wouldn't waste your time. I mean, the state of the local media is a whole nother discussion, but often you've probably got one person running that whole newspaper. And I think there's probably more.
Someone needs to mute their phone if possible.
It's me, and I don't know how to do it.
I think we may have done it for you, Jill. Sorry, Will, do go on.
Right. So I didn't catch your name, sir. I mean, if it sounds like the publication, if it is the kind of publication I think it is, what is it?
It's the Observer, Herts and Essex Observer. It covers the whole region around Harlow and Dunmow and blah, blah, blah.
I mean, I don't know it, but the state of the local media is such that there's probably only one or two people covering that. And, you know, it's almost, I don't want to say it's like flogging a dead horse. I don't want to be cynical, but it probably is. They've got a lot of things. Their priority is going to be the local news. And an editor would say to you that our readers will know about things that kind of affects them in, you know, Essex and Harlow. And it's just not going to be a priority for them. They're going to be struggling with what they've got already. I would perhaps suggest focusing your efforts on, you know, maybe scouting out perhaps specialist publications that would be relevant to the causes you're passionate about and making links there, because I think the local press is in just such a dire state, as you're kind of probably all aware. And you know, there's the consequences of that are myriad, and international development is just not going to be something that's on their agenda. And it's I hate to be kind of disappointing, but I think I would just try and think about doing something else. I mean, this.
Okay.
So that's really useful to see the kind of the reality of the challenge. And for those of you who are in places where the media is in that state, I think you'll kind of quickly find out. So we don't want to give you something to do that is impossible. So I think, as Will said, do scout out the alternatives. And I'm hoping in the remainder of the discussion we'll be able to talk a little bit about that. So what other online media opportunities there are, as Will was saying, specialist publications. It may be that the letter of the editor format isn't for you, so that was what we suggested as our main action. If in your area that isn't going to work, let's talk about some of those other things like blog posts, etc. So if anyone does have some different experiences or some kind of more success with local media, with maybe getting your local events covered. I know I've sort of in the past managed to get, as I say, with fewer local journalists around now, if you write them good copy, they may take it. I've had experiences of actually doing that. So if anyone's got anything like that, then please do launch into the discussion. Just a quick question from Results Norwich that's been sent in. Is it helpful to have a photo to supplement your piece? Will, does that make a difference?
It entirely depends on the space on the page. And that would vary by publication, I imagine. I mean, if it's a good photo, yeah, and they can use it for free and it's going to attract people to that page, then yeah, by all means, send a photo in. If it's digital, again, send it in, why not? If they, such is the state of the industry that there's less and less money around, and if they can publish an original photo without having to spend any cash, then I imagine there's definitely no harm in doing that. There's no guarantee it'll get published either, but I'd go for it.
Great, thank you. So, does anyone want to share any thoughts or ask a specific question now? Oh, we have one in London. So, do you want to come close to the microphone? And bear with us a second. There's a lot of us packed around the table.
Hello there. You mentioned that it can be quite difficult to capture the editor's attention on, international development matters. So how do you get people not only to sort of captivate their attention, but to actually care about issues where they don't necessarily relate or they don't have any direct experience with the course? And specifically, what methods have you employed, if you have a sort of specific example?
I mean, the easiest way to do it is to give it a news context and to give it a news hook. I mean, I think Tom did some work in Nigeria, and that'll be interesting because of the conflict that's going on there now. And I don't know how related to it was, but if there is a big news event going on and you can work in a health angle or an education angle, that's going to make it easier. In terms of teaching people to relate to it, I mean, I'll write the best kind of story I can. I don't know, you can't also force this down people's throats, because that will come across in the wrong way and people don't like being kind of talked to. I don't know how to make people care more about these sorts of things, although I'll do the best I can to write about it. And I'd encourage you to kind of keep finding imaginative and kind of innovative ways to make it fresh and to make it, to try and make it relevant to the people. I mean, if you keep seeing kind of the same old campaigns, you'll get bored of it. But, if there's been some really innovative kind of international and kind of NGO work done, and I think that can help change people's perspective. But in terms of how we can, make more people, the reality is a lot of people, you have to fight very, very hard for their attention on this sort of thing. Sorry.
So I've got a couple. Thank you for that answer. I just want to quickly ask about the hook. I know it's, obviously we've got people around the country who hopefully will be able to start bringing in those imaginative personal stories. And we've also got this hook of the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty, which I imagine isn't going to have necessarily huge resonance with everybody, but maybe a way in. I've got a next question which has been posted in on the chat box, so I'll just read that out, and then maybe we can move back to the open phones again. So this is from Sanjay in Macclesfield. How quickly do you need to get your letter in for it to stand a chance of being published? Should be sent the same day as an article appears. So I'm guessing Sanjay's thinking about responding to an article. And then you could do something about your local results group in the picture, but might realistically be all you get locally. I think that's probably an experience a number of us will have had. So responding to articles quickly, is that something that helps in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, if someone's published something last week, the agenda's moved on, you need to get that in as soon as possible. News is very fluid and fast moving. You have to get that in while it's still relevant and it's still in people's heads. Come 2 weeks, 10 days down the line, that's going to be ancient history. Get it in there fast, news gets old quickly. In terms of you and your local kind of group doing your campaigns, that's only going to work locally. Remember, there's all sorts of campaign groups, doing all sorts of things all over the place. A lot of it very worthy, but it's not news. News has a specific set of criteria which has got to be fulfilled, and you kind of doing your activities isn't news.
Yeah, so be newsworthy is definitely something that we try to do all the time. I'm gonna ask. Jill's just written. I'm going to write to Independent Catholic News with this one, and the Catholic Herald, given that the guy who started Poverty Day was a Catholic priest. So a really good example of that, trying to make it relevant to the publication. Jill, can I put you on the spot and say a little bit more about your experience? Because I know you've had a bit of success over recent years, haven't you? Jill, we can't hear you, unfortunately. Oh,
Jill can hear, but because she can't speak.
got you. Hang on.
Are you muted, Jill?
We might have unmuted you.
She's there.
Oh, wrong one.
Sorry. Okay. Jill, try speaking now.
It was one of the mobile numbers, yeah. I thought this one for right.
I can't hear you, Jill.
Sorry about this. My plan to put you on the spot has failed, but thank you for letting us know about that tactic. I know you've had success with that in the past, so good luck with that one. So anyone else want to share a kind of experience or a question or something that they're struggling with? Because this is clearly a thing that is hard to get in the news. Sorry, go ahead, whoever that was.
Lynn Lithgow.
Oh, hello, William. Yeah, go ahead.
Two things, really. Is there any mileage in approaching schools and the education side of things relating to the Sustainable Development Goals? Do you know whether that subject is pushed in the education curriculum?
So I think that one's probably for me rather than William. Though Will rather. So do chip in. I think the answer is potentially yes, and I know that we have. I've seen some people do some work trying to get Sustainable Development Goals into lessons. Some of you may be aware that the Results hosts an organisation called the Global Campaign for Education, GCE UK, who have been doing a thing called Send My Friend to School, trying to get funding for education. And that would be, a great example of exactly what you're talking about. The global goals themselves, they've produced resources that are very useful and could be easily used in schools. So if any of you have those kinds of connections or would find that kind of activity around World Poverty Day easier than a classic media action, I think that's absolutely fine. I think one of the lessons that we always find is you've got to make campaigning personal to you, and if this particular way of raising this issue at this time isn't going to work in your locality, then please do something different that is going to work better, because that's what this style of campaigning is about. It's about you taking your initiative and doing whatever you feel. Have a go. What's the worst that can happen? It's the best way of getting the word out and using your time effectively. So, William, definitely try and use any local links like that if it's not going to be a media thing. Does anyone else want to chip in on that one?
Naveed, can I just say something on that?
Yes, please.
I apologise if you've already kind of covered this point and made this clear, but it's also worth bearing in mind that the goals themselves are not a hook. That's something that kind of can support a story and say why it's good that you're doing something, but that in itself is not going to cut it.
Yeah, no, definitely not in the context of media, but talking about if people want to do kind of other activities that aren't, classic media work, but for sure, you would still need that news hook. And that's a good reminder. Thank you for that.
My second part.
Yep, go ahead.
Was, I think you've highlighted the 17th, the Eradication of Poverty Day. The 16th is UN International Food Day. Do you think quite a bit of coverage of that or those 2 days in the media that we can hook onto?
You're right. That is the 16th is World Food Day. So if you were wanting to talk about nutrition, you might mention that one rather than the following day. Someone needs to mute again, I'm afraid. We're getting a lot of noise on the line.
I think it's probably Jill. She's trying to get on.
Struggling, is she? Okay.
Oh, sorry. I can hear you now, but I think I'm muted.
We can hear you now.
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear me now. Oh, I've redialed in again. It's all right. Oh, I'm so frustrated. I can't get the volume on the laptop to work.
We can hear you loud and clear. Don't worry.
Okay, right. I'm not obviously not muted then. That was probably me that was mucking it up then.
Don't know. Don't worry. Carry on.
Do you want to ask? Do you want me to answer the question that you asked me before that I couldn't answer?
Yeah,
you couldn't hear me.
If you want to, yeah, please.
Okay, I gave it some thought because we get another local newspaper called the Mercury. That I'm in Pete's area, and one of the things that you suggested in your letter writing thing was to find a hook about, and they're putting a lot in about vaccination at the moment. There's full-page spreads about getting your flu jab, and I thought that would be a good hook to put some information about vaccination and the success that we've had and what UK aid money is doing. That's what I thought, Pete, for the local one. Whether it'll work or not, I don't know. But the Catholic one is Independent Catholic News is an online newspaper, and she's always very glad to have any articles. So if anybody fancies having a go at that, it's a really good one. So I've done a lot of research about the priest that started off International Poverty Day, and it's really interesting. There's a load of stuff there which I've typed up and I've got, which I'm going to use as the hook. I mean, that's the guy.
Great.
You know.
That sounds great. Relevant to the readers, but it's not something the magazine itself would know about or would cover regularly. So that's something that brings is relevant to their readers. It brings something to the newspaper.
Yeah, it's also the 30th anniversary of it starting.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few hooks there. Well, certainly from the Catholic point of view, that I'm going to try for that.
Well, very best of luck, Jill. You've obviously put a lot of research into this already. Really great example of how to personalise something. So hope that works. And, maybe that's inspired others who've got different particular individual connections with issues to think about what their connection is. We've got a couple of questions that have come in on the chat box. So I'm just going to read those out. I don't know if you can see those, Will, but not everyone on the call will be able to see them. From Results Oxford, would anyone recommend writing to a local interest magazine or website? In Oxford, we have a lot of community publications, slightly different focus to the news. Will, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, if it's more, if it means you can create a better letter and that it is going to reach, a large number of people, or, I mean, it's better even if they don't have a large readership, it's better that they run it and a few people see it than you send it to a national and no one sees it because they don't publish it. So by all means, if that's your aim is to spread the message as kind of far and wide as possible, then I see no harm in that at all. Could I say something about Jill's point on vaccinations?
Yeah, please do.
Well, so vaccinations is good because there's this, it's quite a topical narrative, this whole anti-vax movement as well. And there's some fairly prominent celebrities, and every once in a while, one of them will come out and say something a little bit mad about how vaccinations don't work. And that'd be a great kind of hook. You could say Robert De Niro says, I don't like vaccinations for whatever reason. You could get on that, create a nice little hook. I don't know how Robert De Niro feels about I don't know how this would kind of reflect upon the progress to be made using vaccination, saving so many lives in sub-Saharan Africa. So that's not necessarily a news event, but it is attached to people in the news. And if it's a well-known name, a well-known anti-vaxxer, people love to kind of slag these guys off. If you can write a clever letter, and that's where you can get the humour in as well. Think about something that's not directly related to the news, but that's probably something that can be a little bit different, bit kind of nuanced.
Thanks for picking up on that. That's a great example. Peter, who was speaking before, has written in a point, really, rather than a question, about when Stratford-on-Avon was part of Results. We haven't got a group there at the moment. They approached their local paper to have a page each month covering local groups, charities, etc., that had links to the developing world. and reported updates on what they were doing. I know a number of local papers do have those kind of local activities sections. Is that something that anyone else has got any questions on, any experience of, rather, or a Will? Is that another area where the landscape has changed a bit?
Well, I mean, that's very much a local thing. That's not going to fly in a national or a magazine or anything like that. But I mean, maybe if they need to fill up space on the page and they're happy to do that, sure.
Great. Question. So everyone's writing in questions rather than asking them themselves tonight. So Brighton, is it better to focus on facts and figures or to create a good narrative, or is there a good balance to aim for? So that's from James in Brighton. That's the great question, James. Will, do you have any thoughts on facts and figures versus narrative?
I think a bit of both. It's important. You're going to need facts and figures to back the thing up, and like in reporting, they're not going to be happy. Again, mini comment piece. You need to be kind of support what you're saying, but it really is important to be. Unless the facts and figures,
Jill,
seen before.
Sit very still, Jill.
Great, and we're quite close to the end of the call now, but we just want time to read out a last thought here from Birmingham. An idea for a hook of how having rotten piles of rubbish. We have a bit like living in a country without a robust hygienic system. Diseases and rats in close proximity. So I'm assuming that you're talking about a kind of is this a local controversy in a particular place?
To the rubbish strike.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been horrible here. Yes, Birmingham's been covered under rotting rubbish for the last 2 months, and we've just had a short reprieve, but I think it'll all come back again. So yeah. So that's just supposed to be a sort of comedic sort of hook for the local Brummies, really.
I shouldn't be smiling, but it does sound like a potential hook to me. But so we've got about 2-3 minutes left. I think we'll get time for one maybe last point or question for Will, and then we're going to have to round up.
That's Mark here for Norwich.
Hi, Mark.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a couple of quick things. Was something that we've always found useful is just not to be afraid of the press, and that from the point of view of like whenever we've written a piece, we sometimes know your newspaper, know like there's different editors for different things. Maybe even just give them a call and or send them an email and just say, we're doing a piece, we're doing a little piece at the weekend. Can we send you in a piece with a photograph? You got nothing to lose at the end of the day. And also is that a lot of places now have a lot of local radio stations, not sort of like pirate radio stations. We have one in Norwich called Future Radio, and that just covers local things. And they just want pieces to sort of send into them. So you've got an access in there. And I was just going to ask Will about just social media, about Twitter and things like that. And does he get any stories out by Twitter that way at all?
On your first point, I agree. Do call up the newspapers. They get a lot of calls from people whose kind of cause is far less worthy than yours. I mean, go in there, kind of know what you're going to say, but they'll be getting calls from PRs and kind of so on. So just they'll give you the name of the editor that you need to contact, or if you've got a great hook for a news story as well, they'll give you the right person. They'll send you the right person. They're not going to be, we are humans. On the second, social media, I probably should have touched on it earlier, but that's partly what's ruined the kind of the local part of what's ruined the local press landscape. It entirely depends on kind of how many followers you have. Having something to go viral is very unpredictable. But if there are kind of certain elements to it, they're short. Things that go viral are short and funny, and just kind of hit upon something that's relatable. to people. And I mean, if you've only got 13 Twitter followers, it's probably not worth sort of sending out something on that. But if you can get the attention of someone who does have a lot more, that's going to reach far more people probably if something goes viral on Twitter than perhaps it would many letters pages.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. And I'm really going to have to sort of round us up now. So, Will, thank you so much for spending your time with us and giving us the benefit of your expertise. I'm really grateful that you've set out, I mean, very clearly the challenge in some places we've got with making the issues that we're talking about relevant. We may need to give up on some kinds of publications. But there's also, I'm really glad that, Mark, you ended up with that point that actually there's no harm in trying. Journalists are people, they're not scary, give it a go, but use your time wisely, do some research and have fun with it. It's a very different style of writing, as I think Will's made very clear, from the kind of letters that you'd be able to get with your MP. So do, if you get time, do think about making things snappy, and yeah, just really grateful, Will, for setting that out for us in such detail. So I hope everyone will join me in thanking Will for being with us tonight and sharing your insights. I've certainly learned a lot. As always, if everyone could please keep us updated on how you get on with this month's action. I think it's going to be a particularly interesting time, this one. And if you've got any copies of anything you get printed or links to any letters that you get printed, please do share. It's really valuable to us. So I'm going to say thank you again to everybody for joining us on the call tonight, and enjoy the rest of your weekends. Thank you all very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jill.
Bye.
Make it real.